Chairman, and as my friend Mr. Meeks focused on urban banking deserts, let me ask a few questions about rural banking deserts, and in particular, the decline in de novo charters. Since the financial crisis, de novo formation has slowed significantly. There were 181 charters granted in 2007, but between 2010 and 2019, fewer than 10 new banks on average opened per year. More than half of the counties in the United States saw net declines in the number of bank branches between 2012 and 2017. These declines in bank branches disproportionately hit rural communities. The negative financial impacts on rural counties of bank branch closures are perpetuated by continuing difficulties due to burdensome regulations and other roadblocks of de novo community bank formation. These trends leave residents of rural counties without access to much needed financial services and also have negative downstream impacts on those communities. I'm trying to remedy that by introducing today the Promoting Access to Capital in Underbanked Communities Act, which would encourage formation of new banks in locations where bank branches are scarce. It would give de novo banks more time to meet capital requirements and ease other regulatory burdens on new community financial institutions. Mr. Brooks, I share in Mr. Luchtemeyer's praise of your service at the OCC. Enjoyed working with you. Can you tell us what some of the biggest roadblocks are to de novo bank formation?
Well, thank you, Congressman Barr. I very much have appreciated our relationship and your mentorship and guidance, so thanks for the opportunity. I would just begin by saying, as in many things, process in government is everything. And so when I first arrived at the OCC and looked at the bank chartering process, the process flow involved in doing that involved something like 58 steps. I'm making that number up. It was a huge number of steps where multiple committees had to review charter applications more than one time. And that was just one of the three agencies that charters banks. So I think part of the problem is that we have to streamline the process by making clear how one gets a de novo charter and making clear what the timeline expectations are for getting those things approved, even just inside of the charter agency of the OCC. The second thing I would say to this committee is we have an incredibly complicated process where three different agencies have full discretion over whether to approve or not approve banks, because once you have a national bank charter approved at the OCC, you still need deposit insurance approval. And nowadays, the Federal Reserve is exercising extraordinary oversight over whether something that's been approved by those two agencies should be allowed to become a Fed member. That's why it took Varo Bank nearly 3 years from initial approach to charter grant. And we can't have the kind of system we had in the 80s and 90s if we're going to take 3 years to charter every new bank. So I share your concern that finding ways to shortcut that process, not in the sense of shortcutting important substantive requirements, but shortcutting bureaucratic red tape, which takes an enormous amount of time for no good purpose, is really important. The other thing I would tell you is in rural communities, fintechs are the main source of credit in certain respects. If you want to get a mortgage for Sales, Kentucky, you're not going to get it at a local branch. What you're going to do is find it on LendingTree, and that's why it's more important that those companies be encouraged and regulated so that they can deliver those services more effectively in places banks don't have branches.
Well, that's good feedback. I will note a recent study from the FDIC that citizens in rural communities are more likely than people in urban or suburban areas to visit bank branches. Obviously, you mentioned some online opportunities. Of course, rural broadband is a challenge for mobile banking. I've introduced bills to combat both of these issues, but the problems have been exacerbated by the pandemic. Is there anything else we can do to increase access to the banking system for rural populations?
So I would say, Congressman, that consistent with the bill that you're introducing today, we need to have a concept, kind of like a CRA type of concept, where if you are serving an underbanked community, there needs to be a fast track to approval. And I think you and I have talked before about the fact that there are rural communities in Kentucky and Mississippi and other parts of the South where the nearest bank branch is 75 miles away. So the only way you're going to allow those local community leaders to form new branches is if there is a fast track option. And we should see that as community reinvestment.
Real quick, Mr. Brooks, in my final few seconds, can you address Professor Johnson's analysis that a non-depository national bank is an oxymoron?
Yeah. Look, in the National Bank Act, deposit taking is a power of a bank, not a requirement. It is a requirement in the Bank Holding Company Act, but it is a power, not a requirement in the National Bank Act.
My time has expired. I appreciate the answers, and I yield back.